Since last year, countries in East Africa have been battling an invasion of locusts which originated from Yemen. And while it appears the battles have been won in some parts in fighting the desert locust upsurge, the problem has got so bad in Ethiopia that the United Nations says is the worst it's been for 25 years. But for more on this, I'm joined by the Satellite Information Analyst from the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, or IGAD, Climate Prediction and Application Centers, Kenneth Kemucie Mwangi. Mr. Mwangi, very good evening to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the Globe.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me.
The last time I spoke to you, I think it was back in July, you said you were experiencing the second wave in battling the locust invasion, especially in northern Kenya. Where are you at the moment in that battle?
Well, in northern Kenya, there was very good response. And by that time, there was a lot of resource mobilization. There was very adequate human capacity in terms of a trained response unit, and they were able to adequately control the situation. And also the weather really favored the battle such that the rains went away, the wind while spraying was well done, because there was very good control unit. So it was largely Spain that controlled it in Kenya.
And speaking of the weather, what's the perfect time for farmers to plant their seeds in the ground? I mean, in the hope of a bumper harvest?
In this region, really, it's normally, right now, along the equatorial part of the region, the farmers are already planting, waiting for the rains. In the northern part where Ethiopia is and Somalia is, the crops are very well advanced. They're even in late March, where anytime now they should be harvested. And you're finding countries like Ethiopia resorting to early harvesting because the locusts might be attacking the crops anytime, and they're already attacking crops. So that's the situation in terms of crops and the locusts.
Well, some countries seem to have won the battle against these locust invasions. And having said that, what kind of strategies or tactics have these countries been applying, in order to curb the spread of the locust invasion that countries such as Ethiopia have failed to implement? I mean, with the United Nations saying that Ethiopia in particular, the locust invasion has been the worst it's been in 25 years.
Well, the countries that have been able to adequately control the situation have had good late-time information and also good response in terms of provision of equipment, both ground and aerial spraying. And they've involved all sectors in the control. There's the technology side, there's the prediction side, there's the ground and the communities which have been trained to spray and do adequate control. At the same time, they've also been working well with the international community, and also involving their own military unit, expanding their human capacity who are doing the spraying and control on the ground. There's a lot of farmers, even the sprayers, control the hoppers early enough. And as you can see, like it's a multifaceted approach, which Ethiopia really tried, but they're unlucky such that locusts entered their countries at the same time last year in June, July, August, September, and they found them largely unprepared. Unfortunately, a lot of swarms that were coming down south, also from Kenya, from Somalia, ended up also in eastern and northern Ethiopia. And so still the capacity at which they could do the spraying, aerial spraying, has been overwhelmed by the large numbers of swarms. And swarms and floods also happening in eastern and northern Ethiopia. And they've made the situation worse because the locusts are really finding a lot of vegetation and suitable conditions for multiplication and development.
No doubt, Kenneth, that the coronavirus lockdown restrictions made life very difficult for so many people and in different sectors across the board. And one then wonders how some countries were able to fight a locust invasion amid the coronavirus pandemic.
Well, honestly, all this situation has been made worse by Corona. That there was a supply chain cut in terms of pesticides, in terms of human resource. So those countries that were able to control quite of everything, it means that there was very fast response in the country and very good planning in terms of resources, very good planning in terms of pesticides and Also, the weather has been. So that has not been the case in some countries because of the magnitude of the invasion. Really overwhelmed the resources of the country. So that's really what we are having, differences in preparedness, differences in response, and also the magnitude of the problem. There are some countries, it's been really, really bad in terms of the size of swarms and the movement of the swarms and the weather conditions. So that's what has been happening.
Well, the Food and Agricultural Organization estimates that over 1 million people could face hunger as a result of this, particularly in Ethiopia. But I suppose then that the problem on a much greater scale, is much bigger than anticipated, isn't it?
Yes, it's very big in Ethiopia because already in terms of the integrated food security classification, the IPC classification was that Ethiopia was already in a critical point because they've been battling a lot of challenges in terms of, for example, the weather calamities that were happening. There was also a situation in terms of political situations that have limited food production, food movement, and they've really been trying. And a combination of these factors have really made it difficult for the country to adequately control the situation. And it's really affecting their food security. They might really experience a surge in number of people who need some form of humanitarian intervention. And that's what we are seeing. Lucky, the government has really been doing food security assessments in the country. And they're really prepared in terms of numbers, looking for resources. There's been a lot of international, both national and international appeals to support in terms of food security, livelihood interventions, with the expectation that already a lot of their crops have been destroyed by the locusts, both in 2 seasons, last season, which is last year, and this year.
You seem to make an appeal for humanitarian intervention, and one wonders what could that possibly be? Because, so many strategies and tactics were applied, so many different kinds of pesticides and fumigation was conducted on the different countries, but nothing seems to work. What could that humanitarian intervention be, and what could be the panacea against this invasion be?
Still, it's the same strategy. What other countries applied in terms of predicting where the locusts would be, very good ground monitoring, and response, in terms of before the locusts are able to breed, to lay eggs, and to grow into a swarm, very good in terms of interventions in spraying, interventions in ground control, and both aerial control, that type of approach. At the same time, you want to enable the communities that have lost their crop and there is suffering from the effects of COVID and all other disasters like floods that have been happening in parts of Ethiopia. You want to come in with livelihood solution support that you want to supply some form of food to them so that such that they can be better prepared, or you want to give them alternatives like early harvesting of the crops, adequate storage, and also a lot of others ground in terms of local community support that you want to offer in terms of that will help in their food security situations, really, because you don't want the communities to go on suffering virtually 1 year to another. But you want to offer both food appeals, both locust control appeals, and also a lot of technical support that we are offering. IGAD is offering the region. FAO is offering in terms of approaching all these locust control.
Now, for purposes of diagnosing the problem, Mr. Mwangi, what could the potential breeding grounds be for this? What are the pull factors for these locusts? Does it have to do with the type of soil? Does it have to do with the climate or the topographical nature of the area?
Typically, when you look at locust behavior, where they like breeding, it's a combination of all those factors that you've mentioned. They look for areas with sandy soil. They look for areas that have the moist soils also, so adequate moisture. And then they'll typically, after hatching, they look for areas with fresh green vegetation to be able to grow, to be able to they really feed on the vegetation at an early stage.
Okay.
So that's what you're talking about.
Okay, Mr. Mwangi, thank you so much for your update. We do appreciate your time. That was the Satellite Information Analyst from the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, or IGAD, Climate Prediction and Application Center, Kenneth Kemucie Mwangi. Let's take a quick break, and the Globe will be back shortly thereafter.